Welcome, everyone. It is 1923, our official beginning of this centennial celebration for the Ellensburg Rodeo. Thank you for visiting with us this evening. Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, our speaker series is the finale tonight. Thank you for everybody who's been a part of it so far. It's been such a good, well-received kind of thing to do, such a fun thing to do, like for me to be part of it. I'm sure, I hope everybody else has enjoyed it as much as I have. Well, thank you. Thank you. Yep, we are excited to begin kind of this week ramping up for the Ellensburg Rodeo. So everything, the kickoff breakfast to the pancake breakfast, the kickoff lunch at the hospital was today. So many things are happening right now. So just begin with this kind of reminder, get your tickets. There's not many of them left. So if you've waited till now, you might be too late on some nights. So make sure that you plan on attending the 100th celebration of the Ellensburg Rodeo. Tonight, we are focused in on capturing the moment, some famous images, stories, pictures of the Ellensburg Rodeo, also the people who take those pictures. So we are going to be introducing and celebrating and learning from some very fine photographers here tonight. We'll get to their stories and their contributions to the Ellensburg Rodeo in just a moment. Coming in, you can see pictures. If you have not seen them yet, I do encourage you, wait till we're done, but do wander around the room and look at the pictures that are around. There's some fantastic images all over this room. Through all the decades and the century of the rodeo. So do take a moment to look at those as we're going through. My wife reminded me that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and there's about 1 million worth of words hanging around this room right now, but they are such good stories and such things worth telling that do take a moment to look at those. Cody DeMoss told me a long time ago, kind of a life-changing moment, buy the picture. So his philosophy was like, go anywhere, like buy the picture. You'll forget about stuff, you'll forget about the people involved, buy the picture. And after that, and then going through my grandparents' effects, like the drawers of pictures that they had of pulling out, remembering the people and times and all of those things. So I'm going to celebrate this evening by saying buy the picture. Okay, they're worth doing. It's such a magical moment, picture taking is. There's the artistic look of just cool look. There's the important rides and the celebration of like who it is that won. There's also the kind of the neat stuff of the people involved and all of those things. And when they all come together in a combination, that's pretty cool. I'm going to point out to you the picture that's on the screen. It'll go away when my computer gets sleepy here in a little bit. But for me, and I've done this many times over at Molly's shop, just looking at pictures and not only seeing Leah Bauer winning the Ellensburg Rodeo, but also just noticing all of the people in the background who are still around or gone, and all of the people that are kind of connections to everything. That's a magical moment. The winning ride at Ellensburg with all of those people and relationships and connections behind. And I guess that's Molly's image there and Bill's image up here. But for me, that epitomizes what the pictures do. I'm going to let you kind of look at the image up there. Who do you recognize in the background? And just while you're looking at that, I'm going to introduce some of the kind of housekeeping things that are going on. So we have the Hall of Fame wine. And Terry, can I ask you a favor? You said the name of the wine so beautifully before, and I would just say wine, but could you say the name of the wine?
There's a Cab Franc and also a Centennial Blend, which is a Malbec and Syrah. They are for sale tonight by the bottle or by the case. $42 a bottle, or you can also get a glass for $13. And it's lovely wine.
Thank you. You just did make that sound so much better than me just saying there's wine for sale. Okay. So, yep. Other announcements, we have the membership with the saddle raffle. That's available there. Nate, has it given anything away? Nate saw a preview of the saddle. Said it's beautiful.
Gorgeous. It's worth looking at, worth seeing, worth buying a ticket for. It's one of a kind. It took my breath away when I saw it tonight.
Yep.
Everything's hand stitched. Every piece of it is hand tooled on there. There were custom dies. I don't know if this is too much, but
No, it's fine.
I get mad at me for giving this away. But he made custom dies specifically for that saddle based on late 1800s, early 1900s Pede and Farrell saddles that he looked at. He mimicked all the tooling, and it's gorgeous. It's absolutely breathtaking.
So yeah, it's ready, but almost ready. So we've got that for sale. We'll have that during the rodeo for the presentation for the raffle. There's the quilt raffle that's back here also going on, and then Mike is still out there. I'm waving at Mike. Mike's waving at me. He's got the paperback and hardback copy of the book out there for signatures, and that. And do we still have Austin to sign wine bottles afterwards? Yep, there he is. Okay, Austin's here too. So thank you, Austin. Next housekeeping thing, let me pull the paper out so I can do this correctly. I have a list of the induction banquet is coming up on Saturday. There is about 100 tickets, a little bit more than 100 tickets available still. So that would be another thing. If you haven't bought tickets, go buy your tickets for the induction banquet. They are going quickly. Silent auction items. 2 people will be able to ride with on your own horses or in a pickup on the Stingley Eaton, the cattle drive through the canyon. There is the Centennial wine label, the original painting. Just curious, Austin, I haven't talked to you, but did you have a name for it? Did you name it?
Daniel helped me name the title of the painting it's titled Chasing Dreams. When I looked and painted this image, I thought immediately my mind went to what Daniel has been doing in his, not to say that it needs to be Daniel or anybody in his family necessarily, but the idea of chasing dreams and pursuing the rodeo and pursuing the lifestyle really rang true. And I asked Daniel what he thought of the image, and he said, it looks like chasing dreams. And I'm like, that could not have been better.
That's cool. Yep. No, thanks, Austin, for having the painting. Yep. So the original painting will be part of the auction at the induction. There'll be a tour that Joel will give on Friday or Monday, or to give through the rodeo arena, behind the scenes, behind the chutes, to go through and take a closer look at how the rodeo operates. Let's see. I'm going to have to read this one. Magnum etched bottle of Centennial blend from Guard. I don't know, Austin, or do you want to explain a little bit? Joel, you want to do that? What's that? What is a Magnum etched bottle?
Well, should we grab a bottle? We can actually, what we'll plan on doing is bringing it back to the bar.
Okay.
And we'll have it on display for you guys to see what that looks like. It's a very unique, one of a kind. There's only 6 made. If you like to collect wine, this wine will cellar for 10 years. If you like to cellar wine, of course that is temperature dependent in these types of things, as wine drinkers know. But it is a very unique and special bottle that we created for 6 people that would like to participate in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very nice. There'll be an evening available for the smoke and barrels. And then, just the reminder that wine is available for tasting tonight, and bottles or cases are available for sale. Okay. Another kind of housekeeping thing to get started with, the Ellensburg Rodeo Mural Project through the Downtown Association. They have actually, it was a good idea, and people talked about repainting the downtown murals this year in front of for the Centennial. Running a little bit behind on that, but the idea has gained enough momentum that there is an organization that is raising funds to redo all the murals. So there are flyers available out front, okay? So there are donations. It's got a QR code here that you could just take a picture of it and go directly to it on your phone. But there's a couple flyers in the back if you're interested in doing that and participating in repainting the murals. So, and then I apologize, I've forgotten your name, but who would be? Can you introduce yourself?
Brenda DeVore with the
Thank you, Brenda.
Downtown Association, and just thank you for your interest in supporting the mural restoration. There's 3 murals that we want to restore. They're all rodeo and fairgrounds related, and that includes on the side of the Kleinberg building, the small on the side of the Daily Record building, and then the one in the Huntsman building. So we just appreciate with any donations that can come our way, and we'll get those done as soon as we can.
Okay, thank you. Let's see, I'm looking around. Ken, is there anything I forgot to? That was a pretty good list of housekeeping, but there's a whole lot of things going on this week, so put that in there. Awesome.
What's happening on Saturday?
The induction banquet. Okay. Yep. So, yeah. So I think with that, let's go ahead and kind of move into the topic for tonight. I'll begin by presenting just kind of a brief history of DeVere Helfrich. And by way of introduction to just rodeo photographers in general. In my line, I've known many rodeo photographers through generations, through years. And that is a job that it's such a unique perspective. It's got an artistic eye, a technical eye, a photographic eye, kind of where do you capture the moment, all of those type of things. A love of rodeo has to be part of it. A little bit of masochism maybe to travel around with no money, because that's basically going to be true. No money, love of the sport, taking thousands and thousands and thousands of images that for a lot of parts will just kind of go into a computer or a file cabinet, but a few of them will show up on somebody's walls and be heirlooms and be precious moments. And the photographers are such interesting people. I'll say that later on. It's such diverse ways of coming to love of rodeo. That is also going to be true of the guy that I'm going to tell you the story of, John DeVere Helfrich, and he goes by DeVere on all of his pictures. For about 30 years was the gold standard of rodeo photography. Like if you go back to the 40s, 50s, early 60s, if you're looking at a famous rodeo photographer photograph, it's probably taken by DeVere. He won countless awards as a photographer of the year. Back then, I believe you correct me if I'm wrong on this, Molly, but the Pro Rodeo Sports News had some pretty strong contracts with a few people. So DeVere sold a lot of pictures to the magazines, the rodeo magazines. So he was one of the official photographers of rodeo. He was born in 1902 in Central Oregon, right outside of Prineville. I did not know this till doing research. The McCoyne, that was a family name of people that I was friends with. The McCoyne family, big ranch down in Central Oregon. So when I learned that, I was like, hey, I know those people. That's an interesting connection. So real cowboy person. College educated, went off to college from his ranch. Basically had a surveying job, worked for an irrigation company, mapped out irrigation ditches and worked on irrigation ditches, owned a furniture store for a little while, had a ice cream shop right before World War II that basically shut down when the war started. Basically, there wasn't enough ice cream, sugar, or anything like that. So he's like, well, I'm out of business. What am I going to do? And he left all of that and started taking pictures at rodeos and spent the next 30 years doing that. So I expect we'll hear some interesting stories of things that go with that through the rest of the evening. The love of rodeo that brought him to that, I don't know if I won't put it back on because we're telling stories now, but the picture of Miss Klamath at the Ellensburg Rodeo was one of his, or the famous picture of war paint from the Ellensburg Rodeo was one of his. So he and his wife would travel around, at first in motel rooms. Mike wrote in the book, basically they would develop negatives in the bathtubs and sinks, which probably wasn't too good for the hotels they were renting, but that's what they would do overnight. And they would have pictures for sale to the newspapers, to the cowboys, to the contestants and contractors, like by the next day. His wife would take all the negatives and cut them and put them on boards and label them about whose picture was who. And I remember this from the old days because that's how we did it in the old days. You'd go to boards that were sitting outside the photographer's stand with a magnifying glass, and you'd look through all the negatives to see which ones were the pictures, the good ones, and then you'd be like, I want that one. But that's what they would do. And then he would print postcards and bundle postcards together of his Western images and sell those. DeVere. Basically, you can think of the technology of the time. No matter how quick you were with the shutter, you'd probably get with 2, maybe 3 photographs during a run. So timing was incredibly important. And he basically began talking about like his timing bucking horse runs to get his incredible pictures. But he would look for when the horses were at full extension, feet off the ground, full kick, and pretty much like created the classic rodeo bucking horse image that everybody else has followed since that time. And then the timing of that for how to do that. Again, interesting personalities of rodeo photographers. When he retired, which he did, being a history buff from Central Oregon, he wrote history books about immigration trails and the Oregon trails, and actually edited, I think, about a 15-volume history of Klamath, Oregon, and all the trails that came through there. So the history buff in me is like, oh, that's so cool. He was one of the original for about 30 years, not only Ellensburg, but all the Western photography of the time period. And actually in my classroom, I have a couple of his pictures up on the wall that make the kids go look at those things every once in a while. So original foundations of photography for the Ellensburg Rodeo. And then I will kind of hand this over for a moment for the next important photographer, the next kind of iconic Ellensburg photographer, who is John Foster. So we have Barb here tonight. So I'm going to invite Barb. Molly, do you want to come up too? I'll have you both come up. Barb, do you want to come sit up here? Yep. And then I'll get you guys both hooked up. We have the microphones here. We'll make sure that they're turned on and going for you. And I'd ask Barb to tell John's story and how he got involved in photography in the Ellensburg Rodeo. And then we'll talk about some of the famous images and stories that are up here on the wall. But Barb, Molly, thank you for being here and getting this started. So everybody, will you make them welcome? Just, will you make sure that the microphones are working? Or let's see if they're, yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Yep, that one's good. And Barb, can we? Yep.
Did you say you wanted me to start? Yeah.
I would love that, yeah. And then before Molly, but if you would just introduce John to everybody and tell us a little bit about how he got involved in photography first and then the rodeo. Okay?
Good evening. In 1971, oh, okay, thank you. As the 5-time world all-around champion Larry Mahan rode bareback paper doll for 5 seconds before being tossed, Mahan's hand was caught in the grip and he was whipped into the horse's flank by the spinning motion. He was kicked on the back and legs and dragged across. He was dragged across the arena by his mount and the 2 pickup horses. Mahan suffered a broken right leg, taking him out of competition for the year. My husband, John P. Foster, was in the arena during the ride and didn't have time to think about his safety as the 3 horses headed toward him. The other photographers had backed out of the arena, but John hung in there for the shot. His efforts were rewarded when the International Rodeo Writers Association voted it the photo of the year. He was also honored in 1981 when the Smithsonian National Portrait Gallery selected the image to represent the sport of rodeo in an exhibit honoring champions of American sport. And this is the book that they put together as part of the celebration. John claimed his highest professional honor was being invited to the Smithsonian exhibit honoring 100 of the nation's athletes. His man photo with paper doll was hung in the gallery. Years afterwards, when people would ask if the photo was still hanging in the gallery in Washington, D.C., John laughed and said, "No, it's in the basement with George Washington's teeth." The exhibit included an invitation to a reception at the White House where he met his heroes, President Ron Reagan and the Vice President H.W. Bush. He was also able to meet dozens of sports greats such as Bill Russell, Red Auerbach, George Halas, Gordie Howe, and of course Larry Mann was there. For a lover of sports, John must have imagined he'd died and gone to heaven. The photo of Bob Ragsdale. Let's see where
It's over there on the. It's the white one
that's
there. Can you
right
grab it?
in the back right there. The photo of Bob Ragsdale in early morning calf roping events was named first place by Horse and Rider in 1972. Excuse me. John preferred black and white photography rather than color, and he spent hundreds of hours in the darkroom because, of course, this was most of his time as a photographer was using a darkroom, which took a lot of time of souping things through liquids. One of John's most exciting moments at the rodeo, he really never had any problems much with staying out of the way, even though he was in the arena, not shooting from outside. But in the early 80s, John found himself in the middle of the Ellensburg Arena as a bull tossed a rider and was searching for something else to hit. John said he was a track runner in high school, and he knew he could outrun any bull. All I had to do was reach a gate panel. But I didn't know the gate panel would fall and dump me in the dirt. At any moment, I expected to feel a set of horns hit my ribs. My life didn't pass before my eyes. But I wondered who in the heck leaned that panel up against the track fence without fastening it. Years later, an Ellensburg rodeo director admitted that but he didn't realize he was supposed to wire the panel to the fence.
And if I may, the person that took this was Bob and Lavelia Case, and they sent this over to John. And here's John running across the arena. If you get a chance, come up and look at it close, because it's outrageous. I'm not kidding you. It's really something to see. And John was flying right across. So the top part is when he was getting, the bottom part is when the panel came down.
Yeah, thank you.
I couldn't believe it when I saw that. I went, oh my gosh, we got to take that, you guys. You got to see it. It's outrageous. It's really good.
Some of John's other photo honors were he was 6 years honored among the top photos by Horse and Rider magazine. Levi International Rodeo Writers Associated awarded him a prize 6 times. 5 years he was featured in the Best Sports Stories and Photos annual book. Many of his non-rodeo photographs were featured in magazines including Sports Illustrated, Time, Life, and newspapers across the country. As I said, he preferred black and white photography, and he spent hundreds of hours in his darkroom perfecting a skill he had learned in the photo lab at Indiana University. John served on the board of the rodeo board from 1974 through 1985, handling publicity and advertising. And he was also inducted into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame in 2001 and was Grand Marshal of the Rodeo Parade in 2012. He photographed the rodeo until he was 82 years, and about then I suggested to him, you know, maybe you ought not to ask for a arena pass anymore. Maybe you ought to just stay in the sidelines. But he didn't. He was right at 82. He was right out there in the arena. But my family has loved being involved with rodeos since we moved here, and we hope that for a successful another second 100 years of the rodeo. And I guess I will add a little personal note. I've been involved with the photographs, those photographs back there in the, what do you call that, Molly?
On that partition up there, with the Native Americans coming down the hill.
On that wall.
Yeah, and the teepees.
I worked worked to get some money donated so that we could have those. Those were some of the first rodeo photos that we really had a chance to expand to a larger size. And I've been digitizing rodeo photos, not recently. This was back about 8 years. I spent 2 years working on digitizing rodeo photos from almost all from Ellensburg, and so that the public now can have access to seeing those photos.
And Barb, didn't you say a lot of them were taken by Seattle photographers? Like they would come over and take some of those pictures and stuff too. They're from Seattle Times and that kind of thing. And then that's how it got to the Frank Exner collection too, as well.
Yeah, I digitized the Frank Exner was a long time. Probably many of you knew him. A long time person that worked in the back shop of the Daily Record. And what else did he do?
Well, he did advertising. Yeah, he had a ranch too, and right here, very much part of the McManamy family, the whole thing. So he had a very wide, incredible collection. So when they would have things come from the other photographers, it was so good that Frank took care of all those negatives. And he, at the end, had this incredible collection for Ellensburg because of those photographers that came over, and it was because of Frank and Monty that actually housed everything, and then it was you were able to scan those negatives, and they were beautiful negatives, great big negatives, beautiful.
In the photos in the barnwood frames, those I think those are all Exner photos.
Yes,
and there
yeah.
are many more
And
of
I got a
those.
chance to. I was so lucky because I worked with Barb and Bridget Cliff, and I got to print those. So those were printed from my studio. But it was so exciting to see those fabulous pictures of, especially the parade too. The parade downtown, right downtown, and just one after another, and clear, just honestly beautifully clear photographs.
Very high quality.
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much.
Can I just one more real quick story? Can you just tell what happened when John did get the invitation to go to the Smithsonian? Because this is so incredible. Can you just tell that story? Because it's good.
Yeah, John got. Let's see. It was for the for the Larry Mahan picture. He got a letter from the Smithsonian and congratulating him on this fine photo, and they asked if he could submit a copy, and that they were going to have a reception. Well, it was for this the book that was here, the Championships of Sport, and they wanted him to come back there too to a reception. And first he got a letter, and I said, well, aren't you going to ask that or answer that letter and go back to Washington, D.C.? And he said, no, it's fine. It's time for finals at CWU, and I'm too busy. And then a letter came from the White House inviting him to come to a reception for the Championship of Sport. And I finally had to do a little, I don't know if I had to nag, but I had to bring the subject up several times. And I suggested maybe he get an air ticket and head back there. And so he finally saw the light and went back. And of course he had just a wonderful time back there, meeting all these sports figures that were at that reception. And I had a toddler at home, so I said, take your daughter, Cynthia, and she'll have a ball going up there and seeing all these famous sports stars. So that was a really highlight of his career, was to get to go there.
And Barb, if you would, I would go back. Would you introduce your husband to the people who don't know who John Foster was? Like what brought him to Ellensburg and his role here and how he got involved in the rodeo?
I have a hearing problem.
Okay.
Tell what John did when he worked at Central.
Oh,
Why you came here?
Pardon?
Why you came here?
Yeah, we came to Ellensburg sight unseen, and of course we loved it the minute we got here. John taught photojournalism and journalism subjects at CWU, but we just were so thrilled. But what a nice town this was, and it was a great career move. He could have gone to another university that was a lot more prestigious, but it was in Kansas. And he came out of an interview there and said, I can't move my kids here, let's look some more. So that's when the Ellensburg, or the job at Central Washington University came up. So I think he made the right move.
And Barb, if I'm not mistaken, Ellensburg was kind of the introduction to rodeo, correct? There wasn't a history of the sport before moving to Central.
He didn't do rodeo very much before that, did he? Before he came to Ellensburg?
No. He'd been to rodeos, but I don't even remember where they were. Probably in the West, but no, he hadn't done much.
If I can focus on the story of Larry Mahan and Paper Doll at the moment, one of the impetuses to the beginning ideas to the speaker series, I was at Scott Shelton's shop last fall, and he was like, by the way, and then for the next 40 minutes we talked stories. But I would like to have Scott come up and give his perspective of that moment. So we have the image up here that made the Smithsonian and all of those, the book and all of those type of things. But Scott, would you, if I can hand this microphone to you, have you come up here. There's more to the story behind it and different instances of just wherever you feel like you go with that.
Okay, thanks, Daniel. I'm Scott Shelton, to those of you that don't know me. I'm the guy that's lucky enough to be married to Kay. So that probably tells everybody who I am now. Anyway, as Daniel said, the rodeo is getting pretty close. Kay and I were driving to town tonight, and I noticed about 17 vehicles parked at the Western Village. And I thought, well, what in the heck is going on there? And Joel, you'll probably agree with me Now is when all the directors are coming in every night and having a meeting to make this dang thing fly. And I thought to myself, them poor SOBs. I was a fellow director on the board for 5 years. So anyhow, to talk about this Larry Mahan photo, my connection is, I'll take you back a few years. In the 50s, 60s, and 70s, this was before the advent of EMTs, paramedics, and really even ambulances. The rodeo board would they would ask an old gal that was a registered nurse down here at the Ellensburg General Hospital and was good at medical and surgical procedures. If she wouldn't come down and man the nurse's shack, they called it at the time, and that was my mother. Gladys Shelton was her name. Most of you know her as Gladys Seth. She had remarried. She had remarried Elmer Seth after my father's, death, and that was my mom. Very proud of that. Anyway, she was the kind of the head nurse of the Ellensburg Rodeo for many, many years, and I remember coming in, helping her on Friday, because rodeo then was just a 3-day show, and we'd come in on Thursday and Friday, and we'd get her nurse's shack all stocked with bandages and all the stuff that a gal would need to handle all these disasters. And so that is kind of the lead up to that. At that time of that Larry Mahan photo, I was a snot-nosed kid about 12 years old, and I thought rodeo was the coolest thing in the world. I imagine it was partly because every generation in my family since the onset of the rodeo had volunteered or served in some fashion up to that point. The old photo in the back there that shows the rodeo grounds being built with all the draft horses and all the equipment there. My grandpa's team is pulling the grader in that picture. Partly because in that time period, the Cascade Canal was being built. My grandpa had his team of horses and his grader in there helping build that canal. It wasn't far out north of town here. This is a story my family's told, and he walked his horses and grader into town to work on the rodeo grounds, and that was his volunteerism that got started. So on down the line, my dad volunteered and helped take the Royal Court to many parades, and my uncle was a founding father of the Ellensburg Rodeo Posse, and my mom's volunteerism. The Ellensburg Rodeo was a huge thing to me. And with that, rodeo in general became huge. And of course, who better to have a hero to have than Larry Mahan? I mean, that guy was my hero. And so I'm sitting there watching this ride when he hangs and drags and gets his leg broke. And the stretcher crew picks him up, takes him into Mom's nurse's shack. And I'm standing outside. I'm going to back up here a little bit. The nurse's shack is right at the bottom of the JJ ramp. The room still exists. It's not a nurse's shack, but it's still a little teeny old building a room that still exists. Paul Evenson of Evenson's Funeral Home, he would back his hearse in between JJ and the Buckaroo section because we didn't have an ambulance. So it all worked out. I mean, it wasn't pretty, but by golly, we got her done, So anyway, Mom's in there in the nurse's shack, and she's arguing with Larry Mahan, my hero. And I'm outside, and I'm listening to this. I'm thinking, that's cool. This is really cool. So, exactly. Larry's laying on this cot in that room. And there's a chair right at the foot of his bed. And what the hell? I'm going to go in there and sit in that chair. So I sat right down at his feet, and I'm watching him and Mom argue, and I'm thinking, go, Mom. Well, come on, Larry. You know, I'm kind of trying to keep things going here. Finally, Larry says, I got to get on a bull this afternoon. He says, how are we going to make this leg work? And she says, you got a pretty slim chance of getting that done. I said, no, there's got to be some way. I mean, his adrenaline is up, and he's pumped, and he's going, and finally, Mom says, well, we're going to have a splint of some sort. He said, well, what do you need for that? And Mom says, well, you know, like an apple box or something like that to make light wood that would make a good splint. And Larry Mahan, with his good foot, he kicks me in the shoulder and says, hey, kid, go find an apple box. So out the room I go, and I'm scurrying around underneath. In those days, JJ was not there. It was just a fence line and posts and cars parked there, and I'm scampering around and everything I can find. Pretty soon, back of an old boy's pickup, there is an apple box, and it's empty. I snatch that box, and I run in, and I'm just beaming. I'm thinking, I'm the coolest dude in the world, you know? So I run in there with that apple box, and Mom starts busting it apart, and I start holding it on his leg, and she's bandaging this thing up like this, making a splint, and I'm going, no way. I'm helping Larry Mahan build a splint. And we got him all done and wrapped up, and he got on some crutches, which kind of told me he wasn't getting on a bull that day. In the end, my head was so damn foggy, I can't tell you if he got on a bull or not, but that is my story about Larry Mahan and what a hero he was to me in that picture.
Yep. We'll get to Molly and Bill and everything, but we'll take stories. Yeah, right. You got some?
I said I wouldn't talk tonight, but I have to follow that story. He didn't ride the bull. He ended up in the ambulance and at the hospital, and because hearse or whatever. Bill was the director in charge of Royal Court, and we'd had a princess get thrown from her horse in the grand entry and had broken her arm and her leg. So I was at the hospital with the princess and taking care of her. The next thing I know, the ER doctor sends a nurse down to me and said, your husband just came in with Larry Mahan. So I left my girl. I went up to see what was happening up in the other part of the ER. And Larry Mahan, by that time when he fell, he'd also broken one arm and it was scratched up. He was really a mess. And Bill said, well, you have to sign your admittance paper to the hospital or they won't work on you. I'm not signing it. Well, they can't set your leg until you do something. Well, you sign it for me. So Bill signed it, but then in parentheses, after Bill Subert, he writes, I, Bill Subert, nor any member of the board of directors will not be responsible for this medical bill. Because in the past, sometimes the guys would get hurt and the rodeo board would be stuck with those. Ken, you can remember some of those. Anyway, I sent that to Justin McKee, and he used a little bit of it in Larry Mahan's memorial.
Oh, wow. Very cool. That's really cool.
Yep. Yeah, so it's a picture's worth 1,000 words. Like every time you see that picture, you could bring up the John Foster, the connection to Ellensburg to Washington, D.C., the stories that we hear tonight and all of those type of things, just kind of remembering what happened. Molly, can I turn to you? Do you want to? I know this is a person who needs no introduction, but I'm going to ask you to introduce yourself anyway. So,
Okay, thank you. Well, that's a pretty hard act to follow, don't you guys think? I don't know if I can top that one. I did actually talk to Wayne Vold down at NFR and about this very photo. And Barb, I've got to tell you, you are so wonderful. Barb gave me a signed, and it's in my studio, a signed framed print of that. And I want to tell you, thank you so much. That I just started crying when she drove in. She said, Molly, I've got something for you. And I tell you what, it's the most wonderful thing, and it sits right to my left of where I'm at with my computer. And I cherish that. I really cherish that a lot. Thank you. And I did want to say one more thing. It was really vote of confidence, John asked me to take that portrait of him when he was being inducted into the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. And he came to my studio, and we had the most wonderful afternoon. I got to tell you, I couldn't ask enough questions. There were so many questions to ask of him. But I said, oh, John, we have to have the portrait with your camera in there. And if you look really close, you can look right through the lens. You can see the shutters right through the lens there. But one thing he did tell me was he talked with me about how he stood in the arena, and he actually made himself like a human tripod. And of course, this is all manual focus, all film, the whole thing. But he said he would wrap his arms, he'd have the strap around his neck, wrap his arms in like that, and he would hold it really tight like that. And that's how he would actually work when he was out in the arena. So it was a labor of love to actually photograph John. And I want to tell you thank you. That was wonderful. I wanted to say that, my name is Molly Morrow. I'm Joe Morrow's wife over here, and my daughter Annie is here. Annie Morrow, Allie, is here, right over here behind her dad. We came to Ellensburg in 1970. I came to Ellensburg in 1970 to go to Central Washington University. I'm from Kirkland, and my degree is K through 12 in art. And in the meantime, while I was going to school, Joe and I got the 2 Dairy Queens, and so I was a Dairy Queen lady for 25 years. And then later on, I was able to pursue my dream of in the art field. And so that's what made me be where I'm at today, as a matter of fact. I just wanted to say, and I think everybody wouldn't be here without this same feeling, don't you all agree that rodeo is a passion? It just is. Does everybody... You got to know that, right? And you just got to be a part of that whole thing. And whether you're just watching it, whether you're a part of it, whether you have a livestock in it, a cowboy, a cowgirl, all that kind of thing. It's so special. And the rodeo family is so special. And nowhere else in sports you see a cowboy's helping another cowboy. And, here they are in competition, right? And I got to say, being a photographer, and my 2 photographer buddies over here too, I think you'll agree, that same feeling transfers right through the photographer family. And it's like when we get together at a rodeo and we haven't seen each other all year, like Coulee City is like our first one, the kind of a kickoff thing. Gee, it's fun to see everybody again. You haven't, there's so much to catch up on and all that kind of thing. And so it's wonderful, right? So I'm very happy to be part of that family. And when I started shooting rodeo, I was doing Western photography for a long time. I'd take my camera. Annie was little. We would go out and start taking pictures, and then I started doing photography in the rodeo arena. But some of the people that really helped me get started are Daniel's grandpa and grandma, Frank and Charlotte Beard. And a big, huge thank you to Frank and Charlotte, because they would come down to my studio and they'd say, and Daniel started talking about what they're looking for, heels to the sky kind of thing, and you might find a picture where the horse is, doing weird stuff, but if they're going to make points, you gotta be lifting on that buck and rein, the whole thing. And Frank and Charlotte were so instrumental in helping me become a photographer that shoots in the rodeo arena. And Charlotte would say, well, she said, that's a good looking pictures, but the cowboy won't like it. And she's meaning, the cowboy was not riding right, and he wasn't making any points. He didn't have his, they always say the money's in the mane, right? So put your, the spurs got to be right in the mane. The money's in the mane, right? And so Charlotte would say that. Charlotte would tell me that. And another thing Frank always told me was, you got to take care of your committees. And the committees were so important. You got to take care of your committees, And I've always remembered that as such an important part of rodeo, and I really try to take care of my committees and go the extra mile for them. Daniel's my committee for Bears and Broncs, so Daniel and Janelle are, Daniel doesn't know this, but I have something for you, and I'm getting a little off topic here, but I want to show this to you. So give me just 1 second here. Should I show it to you guys first before I show it to Daniel?
Yeah.
Okay. Don't look, Daniel. Okay, there you go. Thanks. So Frank and Charlotte Beard were wonderful stock contractors. They're wonderful people. They had many, many cowboys stay at their home. They just were fabulous as far as shepherding young cowboys. Marty Campbell is one of them. He's an excellent, excellent rodeo announcer. And they'll tell you many stories about that whole thing. But in 2007, Frank and Charlotte retired. And the Ellensburg Rodeo Board had them out in the arena. And Daniel drove Charlotte out in the golf cart. And so, and the rodeo board lined up and shook Frank's hand. And so here is a composite of Frank and Charlotte. And it's with much gratitude to your family. Thank you. You're such a cool guy. And so I just wanted to tell him, publicly thank you. And if you get a chance to come and take a peek at it, and there's some words on here in a heartfelt presentation from the Ellensburg Rodeo community. The 2007 Ellensburg Rodeo Board honored PRCA stock contractor Frank and Charlotte Beard and the Beard Rodeo Company for their years of dedication service to the rodeo industry. Thank you, Frank and Charlotte, for touching so many lives with your kindness, wisdom, and hospitality. We will remember and continue to honor you for years to come. Moving on. It was really been fabulous working with everybody in the rodeo, Ellensburg Rodeo, and Top Hands, Ellensburg Rodeo Board, Posse. Oh my gosh, and Joe was a Posse member and captain. And in 2003, Jerry Doolin came to me and he said, Jerry was in the Top Hands at the time. And he said, we need to start a project, and we'd like to have a fundraising project. And what it was, and it turned out to be the Top Hands project, actually. And what it was they would pick an event each year. I would take a photograph of that event, and then there would be signed prints available, and then they would make a bronze from that. And so over there, right on that, you can kind of see it's a poster about that. And with that poster, in 2003, they picked Ross Coleman, the bull rider. And Andrea, where are you? Are you here? There she's way in the back, okay. And Andrea and I teamed up, and Andrea she'll be talking just a little bit. No, she said no, okay. Raise your Andrea,
you might be talking in a little bit anyway. Let's bring the microphone to you.
I'm going to have Daniel ask you. Andrea and I teamed up, and it was wonderful that the things that you see here graphically designed, Andrea Paris graphics, you guys. And starting from the rodeo book to the Ellensburg Rodeo poster, my thing down here for spring planting, so many things. But Andrea, it's really fun, and we work with Daniel on his posters too. So most of the things that you see here in Ellensburg is because of Andrea Paris. And she takes my photographs, and I just love what she does with them. So I got to tell you what, it's fabulous. So what she did was, in 2003, they picked Ross Coleman and it was a Frank Beard Bull Generation X. And that's when they had the bulls would come out, but they had some like Powder River panels that were right in front of the chutes. And it made the chutes and it made the bull pen smaller. And I was on my knees, and I'll never forget Maynard Linder. You had to be on your knees, but Maynard Linder, and I was on my knees. Luckily, I was lucky, but some of the other photographers weren't. And Maynard, he scared the heck out of me. But anyway, he comes back behind us, and the bulls were getting ready to come out. But you had to be on your knees to shoot this. And some of the guys weren't. And he goes, "Get down! You got to get down on your knees!" And Jesus, oh my God, it scared you to death because he wanted you down, right? So he wanted everybody to be down. Well, anyway, this bull came really close to me on the other side of that Powder River panel. I'm not kidding you, very, very close, and so close that I caught my lens shade on it. And when I pulled my camera back, the picture that you see for the Ross Coleman picture had a shadow on the side of it because my lens shade made that shadow, and it was just, but luckily enough of it was right there. I mean, it was fabulous. Luckily there was enough of it we could save it, right? And we ended up with a Ross Coleman picture. It was really good. In 2004, they picked Cody Ohl, world champion tie-down roper, and that's the one that's kind of a blue one there. And if you get a chance, please go back and look at it. And I even used the part of that poster this year because Cody Ohl is being inducted in the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame. So on his poster board is that photograph, is that poster that actually Andrea designed, which is really kind of exciting. In 2005, and this is really exciting, you guys. In 2005, they picked Billy Edbauer. Well, what happened was in 2004, Billy Edbauer won Ellensburg Rodeo on Flying Five's Holly time. So this is just a minute. Let me move around here. So this is the Billy Edbauer picture here, and but also we didn't know it at the time. He also got chosen for the 100th poster, 100th year poster right here. But what the coolest thing is, and Daniel was talking about, everybody is behind here. And before we leave tonight, if we can, I'll even send it home with you, but I would like to have you, Daniel's wonderful at naming everybody, but there's a bunch of the guys I know, but there's about 4 that I don't. You'll see everybody behind here, including Donnie Hutzel, and including Pat Beard, and including Frank Beard. I mean, including Don Stewart. It's fabulous. They're all here. And Danny Morgan is standing behind here. John Fitter is here. Tuffy Morrison. It's wonderful. It's wonderful to see, and it's wonderful to see their faces. I mean, that's the coolest part. So here is the original, and the coolest part is that Dan Mortensen, who is also being inducted this year to Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, was leading that Monday when I shot this picture. And then Billy comes up. He was leading with an 84, and Billy comes up and wins it with an 87. So it was amazing. It was really amazing. But when you get a chance, right up here is Cody Wright. And so when you get a chance to see all the guys that are there, but I think for posterity, boy, we just go left to right and just, that'd be fabulous. I'd love that, really good. And then also, again, stories about everything. There are stories here too, like here's the poster. Down here are the 3 ladies from the Yakima Nation, and these ladies are so fabulous, and they've actually become my super good friends and stuff. We've got Ariel Speedus, and then Patricia Heemsaw, and then Destiny Buck, the 3 ladies. So here they are down here. Their minor boards are right here too. It is so there's more behind each picture that's on here, and I wish I know here, and like Ann Hornfent, Ann Clerf, here she's right here, Queen Anne, right there. So special. This whole thing is so special, and it's so packed with information and great things from Ellensburg, and it's an action-packed poster. It's really special, that kind of thing. Moving on from Billy. Then Ryan Jarrett was a steer wrestler, and he was also the all-around champion. And he has signed posters with that too. And by the way, too, they are auctioning off at the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame the Cody Ohl poster as well as the bronze too in the silent auction. So that will be going up for the silent auction. It would be really exciting. 2008 was Sherilyn Johnson barrel racing, and then 2009 was Stephen Dent bareback riding. So that was really an incredible experience, and it was a successful venture. It was really exciting to be a part of. Really, it was fabulous to be a part of that whole thing. One more thing I'd like to just talk just a second about down here, and if you get a chance to see it, this is a tribute to spring planting. And spring planting is on the cover of the 100-year book that Mike Allen has talked about. And it's very, very exciting because I can't tell you how it would be without having Cody DeMoss. And spring planting was here. This is her run in Ellensburg, and it starts with 2008, and the last year she was here was 2019. And so this is her every year right here, with including there's actually two shots here from National Finals Rodeo. So she was a beautiful horse. She's now she's going to be a mama horse and at home and stuff. So, but this is really an exciting time here, and I wanted to show you too. Speaking of the book, these two pieces. So this is spring planting here, and here's Cody. This is the original that's on the front cover of the book, and then Andrea works it over and makes it work for the front cover. Here it is here, and then on the back is Stetson Wright, and this was 2021 X Bulls, and he's on a bull called Stretch from Dakota Rodeo. Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Molly, can I ask you to stay up here for just a second, and Bill and Roberta, would you guys?
How about you want me to sit down here?
No, I would like you to kind of stay up here for just a minute.
Oh, okay.
Bill
Sure.
and Roberta, come on up. I'll have you guys introduce yourselves, and I think kind of again the story of how you guys got involved in photography and rodeo, just as part of the introduction, and then I would like to maybe just ask you guys some questions on like what do you see behind the camera, how do you do the process, what images kind of stand out to you. But if you guys would just introduce yourself first. Do you want to go first, Bill?
Yeah, I'm Bill Lawless, PRCA photographer.
Roberta Barkley, PRCA photographer.
I'm out of Brewster, so I'm kind of local, not too far away. I came here, it's a little foggy in my mind, but either 91 or 92. Didn't get in. I watched the rodeo. I think David Jennings was here as the photographer. Came back the next year, I got a pass. Couldn't get in the arena, but I got a pass to shoot. And Dan Hubble was here for that first year. And then the next year, Roberta and I were both here in the arena shooting. Been here pretty much ever since. Got to meet a lot of nice people. Oh, where's Jimmy Bat back there? There he is back there in the blue shirt. He, first couple of years, he scolded me because I was getting in the way. He was running the gate down there at the east or at the west end.
He's talking about Jim Davidson, you guys.
But yeah, had some great experiences here. A few close calls, and then it put me in the hospital here. But it's been fun. I started out doing some action stuff. In my country up there, we had the Methow River. I'd shoot the rafters, kayakers on the river. I did a lot of backpacking and horsepacking back into the Pasayten Wilderness. Spent a lot of time up there shooting landscapes. Started shooting some of the amateur rodeos up there. Went to OMAC, probably was rodeo in I think 1988, and have been going back to that rodeo ever since. 94, 95, I got a card, and then started traveling, going to pretty much just rodeos in Washington, Oregon, a little bit of Idaho, and that's what I've been doing ever since.
Where do you want me to start? Get me
Introduce
Get me
yourself.
started because otherwise I'm.
Yep. Introduce yourself, Roberta, and then basically to tell photography first, and then how photography led to rodeo.
Okay. So I grew up around horses. I was in 4-H and did horse shows. And then some of my high school buddies college rodeoed, so I started going to rodeos. I like the rodeos better because by the time I got away from the horse shows were all money and all attitude. And I like the rodeos better because the people were real. I didn't start out with photography at that time. I did pick up a camera, and I actually did some motorsports, but I had gone to a rodeo just to watch, and I had taken my camera, and it just sparked something in me. I like the people, I love horses, I love animals, And so that's kind of where I started. And hopefully I've got this. Can you guys hear me? Okay. So I met Bill, I think, early 92 or 93. I happened to go to OMAC and got a chance to sit in the stands and take some pictures, and then started working towards getting my PRCA card. And then I traveled to Washington and Oregon, and I did do one California rodeo, not too much of Idaho, that type of thing. But I really love Ellensburg. I was raised on the west side, but I did have, I think it was the horses and the people and the draw and the pictures, and it was just a combination of a whole bunch of things like that. And Frank and Charlotte were real welcoming and helpful. And I do remember, this is funny because one of the first rodeos I did was Cooley City and Don Hutzel. So I kind of went up and said, hey, I want to take some pictures and whatever. And he's kind of looking at me like maybe I was a tree hugger. And that I was going to be an animal rights activist and do all that. So I had to kind of reassure him that I was not a tree hugger and that I wasn't going to turn into the PETA people kind of thing. So I kind of remember that. But the stock contractors are great. The committees are great. I get to know the judges and the people working in the rodeo, and the pickup men, and not just the contestants, but I like all of it. Next. Point me in another direction.
Well, I always think this is an interesting part of the night for me coming into it theme-wise, because so many from DeVere to John to all three of your stories, starting from outside of rodeo, coming to the sport. Maybe Molly, if you'd get started, just what is it that attracted you to the arena, to the competition, to the show? What is it you see in rodeo that's like the passion you were talking about before?
Well, I like to roll around the dirt quite a bit, so might be the dirt. I don't know. I don't know what it is. It's horses are a real big deal. I grew up in Kirkland, and Mom and Dad always used to hunt and fish over here, and we were really good friends with the Carlson family. And so we're talking about Art and Evelyn Carlson, and then, which is Tuggy's great-grandparents, right? So anyway, so it was a real big deal for us to come over to the Ellensburg Rodeo. I mean, the school year did not start without, or the summer didn't end without going to the Ellensburg Rodeo. And there is one thing that in the old days, if you wanted to ride in the Ellensburg Rodeo Parade, you could be on your horse, and anybody would be in the back. It could be you just ride your horse, right? Dad would haul my horse over, and we're talking, and I rode in the Ellensburg Rodeo Parade, and I thought I had just died and gone to heaven. I'm not kidding you what. And I got to tell you, every time, everybody, when I'm out there in that rodeo arena, and I'm thinking about that little girl, and I got to pinch myself, you guys, it's such an honor to, number one, to be in that rodeo arena, to have my PRCA card, and it's such an honor. It really is. It's just incredible. And I just can't tell you what a wonderful feeling it is. And to know people that have, like Low Driver, and Lo and Emily, fabulous. And I used to cow cut with Lo and Emily, and it was wonderful. In fact, when Lo called me one time and said, we're going to cut over at my house, which was, actually behind the old Ranch Tavern, actually not his house, but it was the land that he had on Fenning Road. I thought, I'm not kidding. I thought Roy Rogers had called me. I mean, I was so excited. And my little mare that we had got at the Quincy horse sale, that's who I rode, Foxy Lady, But I got to tell you, it was such an incredible thing for me to be a part of that, and for those people to embrace us like that. Rex and Ethel, all those wonderful people, and it was so exciting. And so it goes hand in hand with It's everything. And then again, the whole feeling of these cowboys and stuff and cowgirls, it's a camaraderie, and they do help each other. And it's only in rodeo can you really see that. In Ellensburg, we are so lucky to have such a grand rodeo that we have here in the history. Again, I'm just awestruck, really, really. Your turn.
Going back to DeVere Helfrich, there was a photographer here for many years, Bob Click.
Yes.
She had a picture of him up here not long ago. Bob used to ride bulls back in the 50s. And he told me stories about DeVere taking pictures at the rodeo. He'd come back the next day with 8 or 10, 12, 8x10s, and he says the cowboys would just snap those up fast as they could. And Bob didn't stay on too many bulls, he told me. But he bought all the pictures that DeVere had of him. And he sent me a couple of prints of them. And it was amazing that the guy, he could, like I say, he could probably take 2 pictures during a ride. And if he was doing it at night, he had to do it a flash. But he had to change the bulb after every time it took a flash. So it's just amazing what he could do with his camera compared to, what we have now. It's ridiculous. But it's, it's kind of a fellowship being a rodeo photographer. Make some great friends. You make some. I remember coming to this rodeo, first time, and they said, pick up your pass from the gal up there in the car, little red car. That was Bertha.
Yeah, Bertha. Yeah, Bertha Morrison.
Well, when we come back year after year, you get a hug from Bertha and then pick up your pass. You look forward to that. And of course, Hubble was here for a long time, Dan Hubble. And I can remember Bob, Dan, and I sitting out there on a hot day shooting slack all day long. And we'd probably sit 10, 15 feet apart, gabbing all the time, talking to each other, complaining about stuff. But we're all friends. We all got along.
Your turn. Your turn.
Ask questions. I'm not good at speaking in front of people, so
do you like
ask
the dirt
questions.
out there? You like the dirt too?
I like the dirt. Yeah. And I've managed to not get hurt, but I really appreciate coming to Ellensburg, and it's an honor to come here and see the people I see every year, and the people I get to know, and the people that kind of help you, kind of move around and get in good spots and yell at you if you get in the way and whatever. But I like most of the rodeos I go to. I've got favorites, but they're all different. Some are smaller, some are, big like this and whatnot. So it's always fun. I'm probably not quite as energetic anymore as far as spending all day shooting slack like him, but I've always had a day job, so sometimes that limited. I don't now, but that limited. How much slack I could do, because I could only come weekends and get certain Fridays or whatever off and that type of thing. But I think I know one thing I said about the photography was it helped me stay sane in my job, because your job sometimes drives you nuts, but you do the photography and one supports the other and vice versa. So. And if anybody has questions, I don't do well with kind of just speak. Not like Molly.
Happy birthday.
Thank you.
There it is.
Yeah. So if anybody has questions, I'm happy to answer because that'll get me talking. Same with you.
I see a hand in the back, so let's get the question.
This is for Molly and the young man sitting next to her. You said that when you were in the arena, I was kind of keeping you back. Well, before that, I was in charge of Molly out there, and if I never got her back through the fence when the bull was coming, I was kind of in trouble. But every now and then, I got kind of an ice cream cone for the Dairy Queen. Now, if you'd have had a Dairy Queen pictures,
Well, maybe the next question following up on that is I know that DeVere in his stories got run over by a pickup man once and got run over by a bull. John on the pictures up there running to the gate and having the panel fall over with him, and I know Bill had a pretty major close call last year. But
Yeah.
what's it like being in the arena with all the action?
For the most part, I remember the first rodeo I went to and got in the arena. It was just an amateur rodeo. Bulls came out, and I took a picture of the first bull come out, and I went to write down the frame numbers on the day sheet, and my hand was shaking so bad I could hardly get the number down there. Now it's just, commonplace there, I did get run over by a bull in Pendleton, put me in the hospital for a while. I think I'm fully back, or at least 90%. But I mean, I've been kicked a couple of times by horses, brushed against the wall numerous times. The only time I went to the hospital was last year. That was a nasty little bull, still is. I talked to the guy that owns him, and he was going to bring him to St. Paul this year, but he was so ornery he couldn't get him loaded. I was kind of looking forward to seeing him again from quite a distance, though. But speaking of the pictures, I look at some of the pictures you see there, like picture of Shane Hansey or Tuff Cooper, and you look at the people in the background. When those guys come out, Billy Etbauer comes out, Dan Mortensen comes out, everybody's watching that ride. Nobody else is talking to anybody else at the time. They're watching that ride. That's the great part about the rodeo.
I'd like to add on to, I was not very far away from Bill when that happened last year in Pendleton. And of anybody that was, Bill's never in the wrong place. Like there's some photographers that go out there and you could, you think, oh man, that guy's going to get it. I mean, it's like, and there's an etiquette. There really is an etiquette to, the PRCA really drums that into, there's etiquette about being in the arena. And like you never cross the arena right in the middle of the whole thing unless you're running from a bull. Maybe you might want to cross then. But I mean, you always walk, you're not really supposed to really be seen, really. You're supposed to be like from the outside edges kind of looking in. You're not part of the show. I mean, you're there to record the show, you're a chronicler, that kind of thing, to get the action and kind of thing, but you're not there to be a part of it. But this bull actually, I'm so glad that you're doing what you're doing right now, because that bull knocked that panel and he hunted Bill and he was there. And gosh, this man is made of steel, I guarantee it. And so kudos to you for being in good shape right now. Let's give him a hand, you guys, because that was fabulous. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Like Molly says, there are rules that we have to follow. Like say, we can't just cut across the arena, although we sometimes do that at slack. But during the rodeo, you got to stay around the sides. You can't be out there. Although a long time ago, I was in Spokane at the Coliseum indoor rodeo Jerome Robinson put on, and then I was talking to him before the rodeo, and he says, "When you're out there, you're part of the show, so behave like you're supposed to." And I've always kind of thought that wherever I go, wherever I am, I'm in the arena, I'm representing part of that show, whether it's Ellensburg or St. Paul or Pendleton. So you got to behave in the proper way. You got to be a cowboy.
So when he talks about the etiquette and crossing the arena, I'm finding that and I'm not picking on the newer photographers, but they don't have the history that
and the experience that have been doing it for how many years? I don't want to count, but so I probably broke that rule. I was in Kalispell last weekend, but I needed to get on the other side of the arena. So I shoot for the rough stock, I shoot outside, because then I don't have to worry about being part of the show or being an accident. And so, yeah, I was running across the arena, and I also had to convince the local sheriff that it was okay for me to be in there. So the fair gave me a badge, but the local sheriff and the other sheriff that was with him, he basically carded me, kind of. He said, "Where's your badge? Are you supposed to be in there?" kind of thing, and repeated he said, "Well, let me see your name," and then he gets on his radio, and I'm going, okay, here we go. Okay, so and I'm up against the fence, and I'm just waiting for grand entry to start, and there's no way I'm in the way. But so they go away, and then about 10 minutes later, they come back, and there's a third one with them. And so they're all worried about so they have Indian relay races like they do at Pendleton. Okay, so they have that there at Kalispell. They open these gates so it's a track on part of the arena. And so he's asking me more questions. So basically I'm giving him information about me, how long I've been doing it, and I'm thinking, I bet you I sound like I'm challenging him. So I'm qualifying everything I'm saying. I said, look, I'm just giving you information. I'm not trying to argue with you, and the whole time, they're kind of looking at me, and I'm just going, okay, whatever. So those are kind of some of the fun things you run into every once in a while.
Yeah, you look like such a hellion, too.
Oh, I know. And I told them, I said, look, I've been around the relay races at Pendleton, but Pendleton has a better handle on the crowd. No offense to Kalispell, but they've got a better handle on the crowd than Kalispell did. But they were having trouble with some of the people coming into the arena, but I'm standing over on the chutes on the opposite side, so I'm not even in the way, and so they just got a little overworked about. So stuff like that happens, and fortunately I haven't been hurt like Bill was. I mean, I've like climbed a fence and bruised a rib, or I know not to stay on the fence and have a horse or a bull come by and hit the fence and knock you on the ground. That happened once. So I'm at the point now that I kind of safety up on some level. I go in for the timed events, and if I'm in for the rough stock, I know how to climb the fence and do all that to try and stay safe and not be a casualty and not be part of the action that you don't want to be.
One thing I'd like to address, which has been a revolutionary point of our whole industry, is the move from film to digital. And that has been really something. It took me a little while personally to figure out, is the digital good enough? And I had a hard time letting go of film for a long time, even when I used to do weddings and that kind of stuff. And I'd shoot, I shot film for just so long and stuff. And then digital kind of came in, and I'd use my digital camera for a proofing camera. And then pretty soon it was half and half, and then it was kind of, digital was kind of up here and film was down here, and then finally I let it go. But it took a long time for me. I had to prove to myself that I felt just as good. And of course now digital is fabulous. We love it, right? It's quick and that kind of stuff. But, and also it's social media. Social media is really important too. And again, I kind of think about, I try to, again, with like take care of your committees kind of stuff, put something out like in real time. And I try not to deep six anybody. Like I don't want to ruin rain on anybody's parade as far as if they're leading, that kind of stuff. I just put it more out like on social media, like so-and-so is winning. So-and-so had this score, on Friday or something, or Saturday or whatever it is. And I don't really say they're in first place necessarily, but they had a really good run, that kind of thing. And then I think it's really hopefully helpful to you because it's nobody's told me not to do it, so that's okay. But I mean, I think it's kind of good because it adds excitement throughout the whole weekend. And then I always try to end up with, and by the way, your tickets, you can get tickets at still another day left. The performance starts at whatever time, and that 1 o'clock or whatever that kind of thing is. So I really try to add to that kind of thing so that it's in real time kind of thing. So and I try to drive it to their. Again, it's all, it's all digital now, but it's in a social media. But I try to drive it to their website and that kind of thing. Get tickets.
I guess along those lines, I'm curious. What is I'm thinking in my head. I had an image of a guy getting bucked off at a futurity, and he was upside down, and the horse's legs were kicking on either side of his head. Yes. So he's flying through the air, dramatic picture, and then Larry, the cable guy, picked it up and shared that image, and overnight had 80,000 views on it. Like that whole idea of the digital social media going viral type stuff. How do you guys handle or think of that stuff when the show is going on?
What I do, and I want it to, and that's, to me, it's a success if it gets done like that. But I also look at, I look at the ride or the run or whatever it is, and if it's a good one, I always keep back some that I need to send to PRCA, or I need it for the. I try not to ever send my ace thing out there. It's got to be good enough where I really feel comfortable about putting that out there, because I don't want to make them look bad, and I don't want to look bad myself. But the thing is, I always make sure that it's not the only one that I have. I always try to make sure that there's another one behind that I'm really happy with, especially when it comes to sending to PRCA and that kind of thing. That's how I handle it. What do you do?
Well, I'm not big on Facebook, but I use it. And I'll put stuff up there, spectacular stuff, something that draws your attention. It might be a buck-off picture, but it's showing the animal. The stock contractor would really like that picture. Cowboy not so much.
That's a Charlotte.
But it just drives people to your website to look at your pictures. Yeah. Provides, people know where the rodeo's at, where I'm going next. So it's a good medium to use. And I'm looking at the picture over there of Flint, and I remember being in the arena when Flint would find one of those flank straps on the ground there, and if it was close to you, you moved away because you were going to get into the act. so there was a few of the cowboys that were even one up to him a couple of times on that, but it was a good act. I hated to see him go.
I just think, I respectfully, I use that medium with respect, and because you just want to make sure that it works in your direction. And also you're speaking for the rodeo, you're speaking for the cowboy, you're speaking for the stock contractor. So you're always, that stuff goes through my mind sometimes. And sometimes I'll even call up or Facebook a message them, and I'll say to the contestant, would it be okay if I use this picture of you up there? Sometimes if I'm unsure. And they usually with their blessing.
So I want to get for the record, Andrea saying something. Andrea.
Good, there she is.
So I'm going to walk to the back of the room with the microphone, and we were talking about the social media and the digital stuff, and basically how do you take the images and put that with eye-catching stuff, either the fair posters or the rodeo posters or those things you've done before. And I guess for everybody who doesn't know, if you just introduce yourself real quickly.
Hi, I'm Andrea Paris, and I do graphics. I don't know, I start with a picture, I guess, and it just kind of goes from there. There's never really a plan. I'm big on typography. I usually start after I've got the photo and I've talked to the people. They kind of cut me loose and let me do what I want to do. And then I just kind of put the pretty stuff on it, and hopefully they like it. That's kind of how it works. I mean, there's no plan. It just kind of falls together. It's just kind of a magical thing. But yeah, I started in a dark room too, like everybody else, and when we went digital at the paper, it was a big learning curve, and I was like Molly, I didn't give up film for a long time, and it took me a while to get into the digital thing, and once I did it, there was no looking back.
You do fantastic work. Thank you for all of that. Is there any questions for any of the photographers in the room?
Can I say one more thing, and then I'll be all done? Right behind you is if you could hold it up, Daniel, down underneath the steer wrestler.
Okay, the poster down here.
Yeah,
okay.
that is it's actually the third one in, but that is the original. This is what the original Ellensburg Rodeo Royal Court poster used to look like. And so the Royal Court, there's two of the Royal Court people that are here tonight, by the way. So Christy Erman, stand up. Christy Hellison Erman, stand up right here. She was a princess in 1997. My daughter, Annie Morrow, queen in 97. But also, there's the posse and also the top hands. And Estelle is in that picture right there. Yeah. But that was a brainchild of Scott Repp, and he actually had. There was a poster company that they did like sports posters, and so he said, "Can you start doing some pictures like that?" And 1 year we had the Rodeogrammas on there, and it was just amazing kind of stuff. And we had the first year we did it actually was Christie's sister in 1994, and she was on that first poster. And so anyway, I just wanted to draw your attention. So when you see the Royal Court poster now, which is by the by the Ellensburg Rodeo Hall of Fame, the Hall of Fame poster, that's the very beginning of that kind of thing. Thank you.
Well, I think at the end of these evenings, we've always invited you back for next month, but now it's not doing that anymore. Now we're just inviting you to go to the rodeo. Yeah, so make sure you come to the 100th anniversary of the Ellensburg Rodeo and celebrate with everyone and commemorate the history that's brought us all together for this whole time. So the other thing I'll say before we leave is do wander around and look at the pictures. There's some amazing things that are here. So before you just get up and go mingle and look at the images that are around. I think if there's nothing else, induction banquet is this Saturday. Make sure you join us for that. The inductees are on that wall over there. So then I think with that, enjoy the evening, enjoy the photographs, and then ask questions to the panel if you can grab them before they leave. Thank you.